So I love like when you touched on the neighborhood and then you're socializing, you're actually thinking about networking up, which is something, you know, I don't think about it. If I never house hacked, but if I was ever house hacked, I would have never thought about that. Right. Which is like, hey, living with people in neighborhood that you wanted to live in. What were you living in before? Like, how did you kind of stumble on the house hacking?
Yeah, so we were living in an apartment before that was more of a
Mm,
condo style apartment. So guy owned a condo and just rented it to us.
mm,
So we were doing that closer to downtown, a little further west. And when we were looking for the house hack, we were looking for a 2 to 4 unit. And Chicago's this is in Chicago.
mm.
Chicago's a market where you have distinct neighborhoods. So there's
Yeah. Yes.
77 neighborhoods. So we
Yep.
kind of had a short list of neighborhoods we wanted to live in. Some
Right.
we were pretty familiar with, some we didn't know as much about. So we
Mm,
kind of had to expand that once you start, marrying up like real
mm.
prices, real rents with
Yeah.
kind of what you want in your head. So as we went through that process, though, I looked at a lot of data, and the one thing that jumped out to me was there was one neighborhood that did not lose any value from 2007 to
Mm,
2011,
yeah.
and out of 77 neighborhoods, only one didn't fluctuate,
Mm,
and that jumped out to me, and I said, I don't even know what's going on in this neighborhood, and I don't care. But if it didn't lose any value during that, that's where we're going to live because that's got to be the most stable neighborhood, in this entire MSA. So
yeah.
we looked there. We just shrunk our list down to that neighborhood. We looked for 2 to 4 unit properties in that neighborhood and found one we liked and bought it.
That's awesome. So did you have roommates when you house hacking, like an actual
No,
roommate that lives in the, so it's kind of like a more, hey, we lived in one unit and rent out the other one.
yeah, absolutely. We lived in one unit, so we had we rented we lived in a 3 bedroom unit.
Mm.
So just my wife and I, so we had like an office and a guest room,
Yeah.
and but we also knew that we were going to expand, right? We were going to have kids
Right.
and stuff like that. So
Right.
we had that, and we stayed there for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And both of our kids were born there, so
Hmm.
we lived there for 7 years. And then
Hmm.
our first floor unit, they rented, and we've had three different tenants living, or three different residents living in those units, and
Hmm.
they've all been great.
Got it. Awesome. So you self-managed, right, with the house hacking. So
Yes.
let's kind of get into a little bit math over here for our nerd friends over here. Uh, so you put 3.5% down on the house hacking. So essentially, that kind of brought you to equal value for your mortgage, right? Like the basically your tenants are paying 100% of that. Do you have like any excess cash flow left, or you actually had to like spend a few $100?
Yeah. Yeah, we had to spend probably around $800 or so a month,
Mhm.
is what I recall. Because the first store was paying like 1,500 when we first bought it. They were paying 1,400 when we first bought it.
Mhm.
And then the mortgage was like, I don't know, 2,800 or something like that, or 2,600. So I
Mhm.
think we were paying probably like closer to $1,200 or so.
Mhm.
So it was very similar to that, but that also didn't factor in, and that was with that's with the insurance and taxes and everything
Mhm.
else.
Yeah.
So that didn't factor in the equity upside and the appreciation
Mhm.
potential.
Yeah.
And we recognized that the property had some upside. So once we
Mhm.
started investing in the unit, um, we actually were saving money. And for us, it was just a matter of breaking even from what we were doing before. So it was like,
Right.
look, if I don't have to pay 1,500, if I can come out on top, and I know at least now I'm building equity each month
Mhm.
versus just having money go out the door,
Right.
then that was the win for us. So we didn't overthink it from the number standpoint. And I will tell you, about investing in a great neighborhood and finding a good property,
Yeah.
we created a ton of value because that was back in 2012 as well.
Right.
So we created a lot of value in that property,
Mhm.
and we're able to get a line of credit for 6 figures,
Mhm.
which opened us up and gave us some room to go out and invest in other things.
Yeah. So then you used that money that you kind of did a cash out refi or a line of credit, and then invest in your second building, which is a 3 unit.
So we actually had
property.
saved cash for the second unit, so the
Hmm.
second building. So we used the cash for that one, but we tapped in
Wow.
that line of credit for the third one.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Now tell us a little bit about your lifestyle. How did you were able to kind of save up? Because a lot of time, a lot of viewers will ask, well, how do you save like 25K, 50K a year or whatever enough is to put down a down payment while have small families, right? Or expanding families. So what did you do over there? Like, what is our kind of some money habits you got?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a real good question too to provide some transparency because I can sit here and tell you, hey, we saved 100K and we bought this,
Hmm.
and people will either assume that we just had a lot of money
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be. And I think I want to go into this point. My wife's her family's immigrants, right? Like
Hmm.
she came to the United States when she was 8 years old. So five of them living in a one bedroom house.
Yeah.
So there wasn't like no there was no inheritance given to either one of us,
Mhm.
so every
Yeah.
when we talk about saved money, I literally mean you got your paycheck, you had a separate account, you put some money in there and you lived off of the rest.
Hmm.
So part of it was, and the formula is really simple, right? You get high paying jobs or fairly high paying jobs. We
Hmm.
both had six-figure incomes.
Hmm.
We lived together, and when we were renting, our rent was like $1,500 a month.
Right.
But I have owned three. I'm on my third car now, and I've had the third one for 5 years. Okay.
Hmm.
So I've
Hmm.
owned three cars in my life. So I'm a buy a car, you ride it until it stops working kind of
Right.
guy. Or until you're forced to shift and get a new car.
Yeah.
And we didn't splurge. We saved. We sat down, we had a budget, and we saved around 40, I think 30 or 40% of our
Wow.
respective salaries we
Hmm.
put into a savings account. So, and that, of the net revenue of the net income. So we took 30% of our net income and directly put it into a savings account. We
Hmm.
had another account for our bills, and then you could live off of whatever was left.
Hmm.
So we just didn't spend that much money. I got
Yeah.
excited about watching the bank account grow. I'm like, ooh, we're almost at a point where we could buy a property, right?
Yeah.
And we actually did that for the first one, and we were shocked that we didn't know about an FHA loan or anything like that. So I
Yeah.
thought we needed 20%. So we had saved 20%. So when we heard it that we could do an FHA, we actually spent $50,000 of cash to do renovations.
Right.
Which, I mean, I probably wouldn't do that again now. I'm like, oh, you guys have loans available for this? I didn't know. We
Yeah.
had saved the money, so we're like, we'll just use the money we saved.
Right.
Um, so we saved because we set a budget first and foremost.
Hmm.
Now, as our family expanded, that was something that was well thought out. That first property was meant to start building equity and
Hmm.
start getting to the point where we could break even on some of our expenses.
Hmm.
When we bought that 3 unit property, we bought it right before my first son was born,
Hmm.
and that property netted us around $1,100 to $1,200 a month in cash flow.
Hmm.
So that now, if you couple that with our first property, we are basically from a living standpoint,
Yeah.
we're break even. So
Yeah.
now we just have our regular living expenses, clothes, food, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
When we bought our third property, we were completely well, I shouldn't say completely. Daycare killed us. Those daycare costs were ridiculous. But outside of daycare, we were getting to the point where we were break even. We knew that, like you said, the expanding family, those daycare costs were ridiculous. So
Yeah.
these properties we're saving money to get income from these properties to pay for these expanding costs.
Yeah.
And we knew that. And obviously we were moving up in our careers as well and growing.
Hmm.
So I mean, but we never expanded our own personal living. I mean, we
Hmm.
stayed in that 2 unit for 7 years.
Yeah.
I drove the same car until we had the first kid. We had the first kid. We got a small SUV. Still drive
Hmm.
that small SUV.
Hmm.
We just focused on it. When I quit my job, the reason I was able to quit my job was, we didn't go out and get an extravagant lifestyle.
Hmm.
We certainly bought a new house. So we have a nice, house in Cincinnati,
Hmm.
and we're grateful for that. But um, we don't spend like that, and part of
Hmm.
it is because we recognize the flexibility is more important, but we try to save as much as we can,
Yeah.
and continue to invest in deals and
Yeah.
opportunities.
And get back to the daycare, it's like once you become FI, you could have one of the spouses spend more time with them. So essentially, there's alternative ways to do daycares. Is a lot of more saving.
Y-
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, because that is a big one with people who has kids. So that's great, awesome. So let's kind of talk about what kind of really accelerated, because oftentimes people would talk about, hey, you're buying a single family house or multiplexes, small plexes, essentially they're kind of slow to accumulate because saving rate can only kind of get you so far, because it's a limited income thing, and then you can only save so much, right? So what kind of accelerated from there, because now you're doing syndication, right? So I'm guessing that
Mhm.
probably has some multiply effect to it. Can you kind of tell us how you kind of got into it?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think
yeah.
so. We bought the 2 unit. We talked about the 3 unit. The next purchase we made was an 8 unit building, and the
Mm-hmm.
8 unit building was really intentional on a couple of fronts. First and foremost, it was a commercial property, which was really
Mm-hmm.
important to me.
Yeah.
The second thing is it's the first property where we outsourced property management, and
Mm-hmm.
for me, I wanted to gain experience managing the property manager,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to have experience owning commercial apartment buildings because I knew that the only way to grow in the way at the speed I wanted to grow was to help people and bring on investors.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to build my credibility and build my confidence before going over to an investor. I didn't want to tell them, hey, I've got these two properties. Why don't you come invest with me? Because I wanted to learn more about, okay, what are the things I don't know when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
property management? What are the things that I don't know when it comes to owning commercial real estate?
Mm-hmm.
And not the property is in Chicago, but it wasn't real close to my house. So like it was about 25 minutes away. So, the other properties I was driving by all the time because it was
Mm-hmm.
easy. But this
Mm-hmm.
one's like, okay, I can't just wake up and
Right.
go over there. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
to actually figure out where in my schedule I can make this trip.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to gain more experience on how to actually manage and going through that process. We got more comfortable with the thought of working with investors and understanding where some of those challenges were,
Mm-hmm.
and that really opened us up mentally. And I think the biggest thing is mentally, right? The biggest thing
Mm-hmm.
is getting yourself mentally comfortable with the idea of partnerships, with the idea of working in a larger group, working on a large apartment deal. So
Mm-hmm.
doing that 8 unit kind of set us up where it's like, okay, this isn't that different from doing a 3 unit. There's certainly some challenges, some things we could do better when it comes to how that was running, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, if we can do an 8 unit, now I can see myself doing an 80 unit or something like that.
Right.
So we started to really build our connections. We started, talking to a lot of people. I actually brought on a mentor, which I was not seeking a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
but for what I was doing, I came across someone who was further along than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And in talking to that person, I was like, oh man, this person might really be able to help me. And he told me he had a mentoring program. And I was just like, I think that could really help. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Mm-hmm.
just very organic in the way it came to be. I didn't do like a ton of research or go through all this stuff. It was just like I met somebody who had experience. We sat down for lunch. We had a great rapport.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, sure, worst case scenario, I'll learn something that'll help me move forward.
Right.
And but that ended up being a great relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, we made some other connections that led to our first really large deal. And
Mm-hmm.
we've kind of continued to go down that path ever since, just focusing on
Mm-hmm.
working with passive investors, connecting with people who are like minded, really want some financial freedom, or more importantly, the ability to create a legacy and make an impact with their family
Mm-hmm.
on how they go to the next level, right? How they spend their time, how they spend their money. And that's what
Yeah.
we focused on. So we've been doing that since 2017.
Mm-hmm. Got it. That's awesome. And so I understand that you also have a side kind of business, and maybe it's kind of parallel business playing into the syndication, which is the podcast that you're running, that gives people updates on the markets, which I think is great. Everybody should check it out. We're going to put a link down here for John. So can you tell me about like how you started that and some of the tips that you learned, because for some folks they're like, man, I gotta start some podcasts and etc. Just in marketing in general, you're a kind of marketing genius on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, marketing is one of those things that is really critical to drive a business, no matter what your business is. And I think for a lot of people, when they think about real estate, they don't think about marketing. They think about the
Mm-hmm.
numbers, they think about the returns, they think about the investment. And what became clear to me was this was really just another marketing challenge. So instead of working with cars or working with beer or running shoes or whatever else,
Yeah.
this was about real estate and working with investors. And my mentor had a very successful podcast, and he was an advocate of thought leadership platforms. And I had worked with a lot of influencers
Mm-hmm.
as well, but I didn't see myself as an influencer. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to start a podcast or be out there like this and be talking to you right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought I would be more behind the scenes, do our deals, and just kind of keep it quiet. And what ended up happening was, as I went through my network, I realized that I didn't have the network needed to do the kind of deals I wanted to do that day. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I did, but when I talked to people, they were very lukewarm.
Right.
So they just weren't there. And part of it is I was still in marketing. So they were like, I know you as the guy who helps me with campaigns or whatever, but not as
Right.
this real estate specialist, this multifamily apartment
Mm.
buying guy. So
Yeah.
it was partially about that. The other part was meeting new people. So launching the podcast served a couple different purposes. One, it allowed me to gain more knowledge and expertise and connect with people who are doing big deals and to learn from them and to
Mm-hmm.
really allow that to help me expand my own knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing that it did was it allowed me to connect with my current network and
Mm-hmm.
show them, demonstrate to them how serious I am about real estate investing, particularly with multifamily and apartments,
Mm-hmm.
and demonstrate that commitment to what I'm doing and show them, hey, look, I just did this episode with this guy who's got a $200 million portfolio. And,
Mm-hmm.
it starts to build credibility for me there.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing it did was it opens me up to a new audience that otherwise
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't connect. And that goes back to the marketing aspect. Everything always comes down to, do people know about your product or service?
Mm-hmm.
If they know about it, what are their opinions of it? If they don't have an opinion of it, that means they haven't tried it.
Mm-hmm.
So if they've tried it, what do they think about it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for most of us, they don't know about our product or service,
Right.
period. No matter what
Yeah.
you're talking about, they just never heard of you. And if they have heard of you, they didn't know you had this product or service,
Mm-hmm.
period. If
Mm-hmm.
they do know about your product or service, then maybe they haven't been inclined to try it out so they can formulate an opinion of it, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe they have heard of it and they're researching it and they're trying to learn more about it. But you've got to figure out where someone is from that standpoint of that relationship, that connection. For
Mm-hmm.
most people, they don't know who you are. And if they don't know you, they can't invest with you.
Mm-hmm.
So creating a platform or creating any kind of platform in general that allows you to connect with people
Mm-hmm.
allows you to let people get to know you, get to know about your product, get to know about the services that you offer. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really why it's important to do. So our podcast is called Target Market Insights. It's a multifamily marketing show where we demonstrate some of the best marketing and multifamily tips to help any investor, whether you're a passive or
Mm-hmm.
active, to help any investor learn the techniques and strategies to elevate their investing. So we get into everything from branding, brand building, email marketing, social media marketing, to finding the best places to invest in multifamily deals and multifamily markets and things like that as well.
That's awesome, because I think the email marketings and all that marketing skill can be used. It doesn't matter what kind of your business is, right? Like whether you want to do a YouTube channel with dog yoga, or doing a family business. And you also talked about, and I'm gonna go into the under the hood a little bit more. You also talked about like you generate these leads. Now, can you kind of walk us through like how do you actually track your leads and the cycle of life, like where they are in the life cycle of kind of getting committed to a product or whatnot? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, this is called a marketing funnel, and these are things that are not tied to real estate. This is just marketing in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to step back and say, hey, let's not do this how everyone else I met in multifamily is doing this. We need to do this as marketers. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
kind of peel back on, lean on my 15 years of marketing experience to say,
Mm-hmm.
how do we do this as marketers? So we create a marketing funnel, and at the top, it really comes down to awareness, right? Are people aware of your
Mm-hmm.
product or service? If they're aware, then it's a matter of conversion. Have they tried your product or service? What is
Mm-hmm.
their opinion of your product or service? Will they repeat, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you get into the actual funnel and understand where people are at. So in this case, if people are trying to learn about us in the business, and if you're looking at email marketing, well, are they on my list or are they not on my list?
Mm-hmm.
Do they actually back up? do they know who I am? Have they come to my website, or do they have
Right.
no idea who I am and they've never been to my website, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is get them to know who I am. Once they know who I am, get them to come to the website. Once they're on my website, get them to download, our lead generation piece so they can get on
Mm-hmm.
my email list. Once they're on my email list, then I can start having more conversations with them to
Mm-hmm.
educate them on investing, what investing looks like potentially,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially build a connection with us.
Yeah.
So ideally, when we have a deal, they may have interest in investing with us in a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And any product, any service, it goes through the same funnel. Even if you're trying to tell yourself no, the answer is the same. And we can use
Mm-hmm.
Nike as an example. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Nike. Well, do they know Nike? Yes, most people probably have heard of Nike, so they're aware of Nike.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something? Is it a brand that they would consider? So once
Mm-hmm.
you're aware, would you consider it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to come down to the individual, whether or not it's
Right.
in their consideration set or not. Let's
Mm-hmm.
assume that it is in their consideration set. All right, well, have they tried it? How do you
Mm-hmm.
get them to try? If you're willing to consider it, how do I get you to try it? Can I
Mm-hmm.
get you into a pair? Once you try it, how do I then get you to be a repeat buyer? And
Mm-hmm.
then once you are a buyer, how do I now get you to be loyal where this is your brand of choice and your brand advocate? So those are kind of the steps that you will follow.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going back to the investing model, it could be, have you heard of Casmon Capital?
Mm-hmm.
And assuming you keep saying yes all the way through the bottom line, the holy grail is, how do I make you a loyal Casmon Capital investor?
Mm-hmm.
Where you invest with us, we are your first choice, if not your only choice to
Mm-hmm.
invest. And you want to build your marketing in a way that allows you to walk people through that journey
Mm-hmm.
and build that connection with you.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's we just got a crash course on funnels and how to think about it. Just right there. Thank you, John, for that. So to a point. So what? Just kind of follow up to that. What would be like a good book or a couple books that you would recommend someone to kind of read up on if they are just kind of new, try their hands at marketing, doing their products? Um,
Yeah, there's some really good books. I mean, Gary Vee's got a ton out there, so I would check out some of the Gary Vee books.
mhm.
He's got what is it, jab jab, punch, uppercut, or right hook, or something like that. Jab
Yeah.
jab, right hook, I think is the book. But I would check that one out. There's a book I love. It's called The Wizard of Ads. Now, this is more about copywriting, but it's called The Wizard of Ads. It's a really good book. And then Seth Godin has some phenomenal books on the subject.
Mhm.
So if you look up Seth Godin, he's written quite a few books on marketing and advertising, and he's got some really good stuff out there too.
That's awesome, right? I love the suggestion of Wizard of Ads because over the time, as we were trying to build up our funnel, it become evident to me I can hire all the people I want, but marketing, like copywriting, is like one of the key things that moves people. So didn't realize that. It only took like 3 or 4 months to kind of figure out like, oh, like our website's pretty, but whatever we write over there is not very effective.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. And I understand, John, you have kids, right? You
I
have
have two.
yeah, you have 2 kids. So, what are you doing now to help them growing up to be kind of financial conscious? Like what you kind of have envisioned for them, and essentially giving them some sort of influence from your entrepreneur life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one, they have line of sight to what we do, right? So they see us, they understand, what we do, and they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
paying attention. So we let them be kids, but also educate them. So if they ask a question, I'll give them an answer and I'll walk them
Mm-hmm.
through it. So
Mm-hmm.
they're looking at things like budgets, and when they get money, we try to say, hey, here's some money you have. What do you want to do with it? And break down, okay, well, how much does that cost? Did you add in tax? And okay, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And show them that, sometimes we like to invest our money so we can make it back. And my oldest son is very frugal.
Mm-hmm.
So he does not like to spend a dollar. That's his dollar. He loves to spend my money, but not his
Yeah.
money. So he's learning that concept as well. So just really trying to expose them, just let them listen and learn and see
Mm-hmm.
and make decisions, and try to give them options to say like, hey, if you put $1 with me today, I'll give you $2 at the end of the week, or I can just give you your $1 spent today and just see how they respond to that. Right.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And as you kind of look back on your FI journey, what are some like key habits or things that you do, you feel like it was instrumental in terms of keeping you motivated and getting the stuff done? Yeah.
I think the biggest one is just having a written goal. When I talked about my wife and I saving the amount that we saved early on, I
Mm-hmm.
think that would have been really difficult if we both weren't crystal clear with what we were trying to achieve and have some set numbers. We actually wrote it as a percentage of our income.
Mm-hmm.
So we both knew what it was. We automated it. So by automating that savings, literally it went out I think I got paid on like the what 15th and the 30th. I
Mm-hmm.
think the 16th and the 1st, the money was transferred over automatically. So
Gotcha.
just automating those things made it easy to not have a lifestyle creep. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was really important to kind of set the proper foundation so you can do more a little bit later in life.
Gotcha, gotcha. So it's kind of like a setting up a separate account and you just do an automated transfer over there. So money you don't touch, like you don't see, you don't touch.
That's
Essentially,
right.
that's the principle there.
That's right.
What did you do with that money? Did you put it into, index fund or something, or just kind of just sits in the
Straight
savings?
savings account. Straight
Mm-hmm.
savings account. And then back then, some of the online banking account or banking came on.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember Immigrant Direct was one that we used, and Barclays had one, and they had these high
Mm-hmm.
yield accounts. So I mean,
Okay.
at the time, they were giving like 6% interest rates.
Wow.
So I'm like, I threw all my money. It just went there, and then it
Right.
went from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3, and I'm
Now
like,
it's
oh, okay,
it's like now it's
not quite the
one.
same thing. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, but yeah, I
exactly.
had no problem earning 6% savings
Right.
on money that was just sitting in an account for me. So that was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, so I think that's all the question I have, John, today. Now, if people want to find a little bit more about you and your podcast, then where should they go? And then, of course, we're going to put the links down below here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The podcast, you can check it out. It's Target Market Insights, the multifamily marketing show. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, if you just Google Target Market Insights or search that, it'll come up. And then outside of that, if anyone is interested in learning more about marketing or syndicating, we have our club open. It's the Capital Impact Club. So you can go to capitalimpactclub.com to learn more about that. And then you go to our website, casmoncapital.com. So there we have our sample deal package available. So if you want to learn more about how to structure a deal or what a deal looks like potentially, you
Mhm.
can go there as well.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, John, for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.